Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we're going to be breaking down the last week of MACtion for the 2024 season. That's right, one of the favorite annual traditions of mine in college football, the MACtion games, are coming to a close. And so we're going to break down the very last slate of MACtion, Tuesday, November 26, 2024. We're going to break them down for DFS purposes, tell you what you can expect from each game, as well as who you need to be targeting for or not targeting for your DFS lineups here on this Tuesday night slate. Now, if you've not already, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That week you can be with us for the rest of all of our college football content, all the way through the rest of bowl season. We're going to have both the Friday and the Saturday slates covered this week. With it being Thanksgiving week, we're going to get a big Friday slate. We're going to get a big Saturday slate. So it's a great week to play college football DFS. So make sure you're subscribed so you can be with us for all of our content for that. And then if you enjoy playing college football DFS, you'll really enjoy playing college basketball DFS. Much like college football, it is a game that is not owned by big money DFS guys. Like, it's not owned by a bunch of guys who are running optimizers, running sims. If you are somebody who does some research and hand builds lineups and understands who the good plays are and understands how to use those guys, you can win in college basketball DFS just like you can win in college football DFS. So make sure you go check out all of our college basketball content as well, because we're going to be covering college basketball all the way up until the Final Four here again this season. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. We got two games to talk about, and I love these MACtion games. This is kind of like a passion project of mine. Well, I don't know, maybe that's not the right word, but doing the MACtion slates this year's brought me a lot of joy. I definitely love watching them on TV. So we got two final MACtion games to talk about. Let's go ahead and dive in and break. So the good news is, with this being the last MACtion week of the season, these are four teams that we have seen on the MACtion slates all year long. So really, we're not really being dealt any surprises here. These are teams that, if you've been playing the MACtion slates, if you've been watching MACtion, all month long, you're not really going to be surprised by what you're seeing here. These are teams that we know who they are. We know what they do. We know what they're good at. We know what they're not good at. And so really, this is just going to be an opportunity to put all that we've talked about the last month to good use. And really, I do think that these are four teams where they're fairly straightforward. There's a few situations that have some question marks. There's a few value plays that I think you can look at from some of these teams. But for the most part, we know where the production is going to go on these teams. And it's just a matter of getting it right, as opposed to, trying to deep dive the depth charts and the usages and all that. It's pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and talk about game number one between Toledo and Akron. Toledo is 8-point favorites with a game total of 48.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 28-20 in favor of the Rockets. On the Toledo side, they are coming off of a quite bad loss to Ohio, where they got beat down pretty good, 24-7. That game was never really super close. I believe Tucker Gleason scored the first touchdown of the game, and after that, it was kind of all Ohio. So they're definitely looking to bounce back in this one, and they're going to have a pretty good opportunity to bounce back. Akron's defense is not all that good. They let up an average of 35 points per game. And in terms of yards per game, they let up 426 total yards per game, which ranks 107th in the nation. They rank 110th in rushing yards allowed per game. They rank 79th in passing yards allowed per game. So this is an Akron team that really is you can really attack via the air or by the ground. And Toledo is certainly a team that likes to go pretty balanced. Like, they rank 42nd in the nation in pass rate, but that actually equates for about a 51% pass rate. So they're pretty 50-50 in all honesty. Tucker Gleason is the highest salary quarterback on the slate. And I totally get why. He's the quarterback on the slate with the most rushing upside. He does have 6 rushing touchdowns on the season. He's had multiple DraftKings games, especially ones in conference play, where he, just had a ton of DraftKings points. He had 3 out of his last 4 games over 28 DraftKings points. So I absolutely get paying up for him. And you look at his totals, like, they're directly correlated to Toledo's point totals, right? Like, against Ohio, they really struggle. They only score 7 points. He only gets 9 DraftKings points. Against Buffalo, the offense struggles a little bit. They score 15, 6.8 DraftKings points. But the 3 games in a row where he played well, 2016 points for Bowling Green, 30 for Gleason. 2019 points against Eastern Michigan, 29 for Gleason. 30-17 points for Central Michigan, 28 points for Gleason. Like, this is a guy that if you think Toledo is going to score points, he's going to be very correlated, because he's going to get passing and rushing touchdowns from him. Now, the backup Richter did play a little bit last week against Ohio, but that appeared to be more of a, we're frustrated, this game's over type of situation. I don't think it's going to equate to Richter playing a lot in this one or getting a surprise start. Gleason is definitely their guy. At the running back position, this has been absolutely a mess for this team. So basically, the guy that had been carrying the water for most of the season was Connor Walenzak. But, that was when they didn't have a lot of healthy guys, and he didn't score a lot of touchdowns, so he never had a lot of DraftKings points. And now they're starting to get more healthy. So you're going to see carries for Savon Clark. He had 2 last week in their game against Ohio. Willie Shaw III had 6 against Ohio. And then Jacquez Stewart was, in my opinion, their best skill player coming into the season. He only had 2 carries against Ohio. But he also caught the ball twice. So really, I think this is a situation you can just totally avoid. Gleason is likely to vulture any rushing touchdowns anyway. But to me, the one with the most upside would be Stewart because A, of how much we thought of him in the preseason coming in, and B, because he will be the one that catches passes. So he would probably be the one that I'm most likely to play. But again, this is a really ugly committee. You can certainly avoid this situation. At the wide receiver position, it's a lot easier to read. It's a lot easier to read. They pretty much only throw to 2 guys, Jerwan Newton and Junior Vander Ross. Now, in terms of production, Vander Ross and Newton, they're pretty close in terms of a season total, honestly. Newton has been slightly better from a DraftKings perspective, but not so much that it outweighs their price tags. Especially once you look at conference play, Vander Ross has actually had a better run during conference play than Newton has. Newton's kind of buoyed by the 2 huge games, whereas Vander Ross has been more consistent in their game log. So I think if you're playing GPPs, I think Newton's probably a higher ceiling guy. But Vander Ross, when you think about the points per dollar perspective, is certainly in play for me. I'm going to be playing both these guys. I probably won't be double stacking them though, just because I don't think Toledo is going to have a super high amount of passing volume here in this one. And it makes it really hard for double stacks to get home when you're just not going to throw the ball 30, 40 times a game. Austin Torres is the tight end for this team. He plays quite regularly. He actually caught the touchdown against Ohio, their one lone touchdown. He's not, it's Anthony Torres, not Austin Torres. Austin Torres, that's somebody. That's an athlete. I can't think of who it is. Anyway, Anthony Torres is pretty solid, but not spectacular. I'm not super interested at $4,000. The other receiver that I would play that I am interested in is Thomas Zeros. He's the only other receiver that regularly sees a decent amount of snaps for this Toledo offense. Dotton will play a little bit. Holly will play a little bit, but I think Zeros is really the punt play that you'll be looking for this Toledo offense. Now, on the Akron side, they are getting a matchup against a Toledo defense that is a little bit better than their own. Toledo only gives up about 22.5 points per game, which ranks 34th in the nation. It's pretty good. They also give up 143 rushing yards a game, which ranks 56th, and got to find the number here, 218 passing yards per game, which ranks 59th. So this is a pretty good defense they're going up against. And if you look at Akron's stats from last week, a lot of it is because of the fact that they were going up against a very poor opponent in Kent State. More on them later. And so I'm just not going to be super interested in these Akron guys, if I'm being honest. Ben Finley's shown some good performances here in MAC play, including 30 DraftKings points against Buffalo. But I don't have faith in him to do it against a good defense. I just don't. If you want to play him in a GPP type environment, you want to play this game in terms of a total game stack or an onslaught, knock yourself out, go for it. But he's not going to be a guy that's going to be in a lot of my lineups. I would definitely rank him 3rd out of the 4 quarterbacks on this slate. And I think it's a pretty distant 3rd, if I'm being honest. At the running back position, this is where it gets pretty simple for Akron. They have a true bell cow running back in Jordan Simmons, and he's been their bell cow running back all season long. He's been pretty successful all season long. He's a solid play, even though that Toledo run defense is one of the better ones on the slate. Last week, randomly, Charles Kellum had 19 carries against Kent State. If I had to guess, I really think I watched this game. I wasn't paying super close attention to it because I had it on the multi-box on YouTube TV. But in my personal opinion, more of Kellum's carries came after the result was in doubt. Really, they used the starting running back Simmons more when the game was early, and really used Kellum once they kind of already pulled away from Kent State. So to me, Kellum is worth a look in GPPs, because what if they just decide, hey, we're just going to give the game to Kellum and we're going to go from there? It's a possibility, but I think that Simmons is certainly more likely to be a guy who carries the load again. The wide receiver position for Akron, they really only throw to one guy, and that is going to be Adrien Norton. He is an absolute target monster for this Akron team. You look at what he's done in MACtion play really over the course of the whole season. He's been in double-digit fantasy points every single game this season, which is quite impressive. There's receivers on better teams who have not done that. And really, he's the main guy you can target in this Akron offense, especially considering they're likely to be trailing for most of the game. He's the guy that I would have the most interest in. Bobby Golden was a little bit of a disappointment last week. A lot of people were on him in that game against Kent State. He is a guy that plays in every snap role for this Akron team. He's much cheaper than Norton as well, but Norton's really like about doubled his production in terms of a yards perspective the entire season, and Norton has 7 touchdowns on the season. Golden has 1. So really, there's no comparison to me. Norton's the better player, and Golden's not the best points per dollar play either. Amarion Granger is interesting because he had a big mid-season, but has not caught a pass in the last 2 games, so I don't know what to make of that. Newell is the tight end down here at $3,700. He plays a decent bit. Simmons will catch passes out of the backfield. Kellum will catch passes out of the backfield. The other receiver that plays a decent bit is going to be Israel Polk. Last week he had 2 for 27 against Kent State, and then the other guy that plays a decent bit is Jarvis Rush. He had 1 for 36 and a touchdown last week against Kent State, but I'm not really interested in anybody outside of those guys, I'm being honest, for this Akron offense. All right, that's going to do it for game number 1. Let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we'll move on to game number 2. All right, so before we can continue, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out to me on Twitter. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed. Basically, if you're looking for a community to be a part of where you can just talk DFS, talk strategy, talk plays, and sweat it out together, Fantasy Corner Discord is a place for you. There's a lot of really smart, really good people in there, and we've got every sport covered: college football, college basketball, NBA, NFL, MLB, if that's your thing. In any other sport. So if you're just looking for people to talk DFS with, Fantasy Corner Discord is the place to go for you. Lastly, if you want to know who actually makes all of my DFS lineups, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. I write an article for every single college football slate where I profile my core plays as well as why they're my core plays. So if you want to know who's actually making the lineups, that is the place where you can get that information. All right, let's go ahead and now head on over to the next game, which is actually somewhat of an interesting game in my opinion. It is Kent State taking on Buffalo. Buffalo is 23.5-point favorites with a game total of 49.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 36-13 in favor of the Bulls. Buffalo is the highest implied scoring team on the slate. Kent State is the lowest implied scoring team on the slate. Kent State is playing this one for pride. And what I mean by that is if they lose this game, they are going to be a dreaded 0-12 FBS team. Granted, they played a pretty difficult non-conference schedule, so I get it. But, they're absolutely playing this one to not get shut out over the course of the entire season. So on the Kent State side, they're going to be aggressive. They're going to be slinging it. Like they have nothing to hold back, nothing to worry about in this game, right? And the Buffalo defense that they're going up against is not like this unbeatable defense, this unbeatable team. I really think that this Buffalo defense can be kind of suspect. They give up about 31 points per game. They give up about 442 yards per game, both rank outside the top 100 in the nation. They give up 160 rushing yards per game, which ranks 76th. They give up 282 passing yards per game, which ranks 129th. So the weakness of this Buffalo defense has really been through the air. And if anybody's going to take advantage of that, is going to have to be Tommy Ulatowski, who is now the starting quarterback for Kent State. We have seen him have some success in MAC games, right? Like he put up 32 DraftKings points against Eastern Michigan, 32 DraftKings points against Ball State. I think there's upside here. I think that he's very clearly, if you were power ranking the quarterbacks, 4th, but I think there's more upside to playing Ulatowski. I really do. Personally, I will probably have slightly more Ulatowski than Ben Finley. I think my exposure to Finley, who, like I said, is my 3rd favorite quarterback on the slate, will be in game stacks of this Toledo Akron game. Whereas for Ulatowski, I think you can play him in more different types of lineups because there's going to be a ton of passing volume for him. Like they're going to be throwing the ball because they're going to be behind. And anytime you have a lot of opportunities to throw, that's a lot of opportunities to put up DraftKings points. On the running back position for Kent State, they do have a workhorse running back in Kai Thomas. Granted, he doesn't score a lot of touchdowns at all. He's had 1 on the season on 135 rushing attempts. It's actually kind of crazy, but they're going to give him the rock. He's going to have plenty of opportunities to do so. The downside is that he really hasn't given a good DraftKings viable score in the last 4 weeks because, again, he doesn't score touchdowns. So if he does happen to find the end zone on this one, he's probably going to pay off his price tag. You just can't really rely on that because of how much he does struggle to find the end zone. Now, Curtis Douglas is actually their 2nd most productive running back on the season. Last game against Miami, Ohio, he had 5 carries for 7 yards. And then Aiden Harris is actually another running back as well, but he hasn't played in the last few weeks. So the guy I would be looking at as an RB2 would be Douglas, but I don't really have a whole lot of interest in him. I would just rather play Kai Thomas. Like, this isn't a slate where you have to really work to save like in pinch pennies. So Kai Thomas would be the running back that I would play from this Kent State. So at the wide receiver position, Kent State also makes it pretty easy. They throw to two guys. Literally, Krishan McCray and Luke Flourier account for over 70% of their receiving production on the season. And really, you can just keep it with those two guys. Now, McCray has been a little more proven, a little more of a big play threat in the course of the season. He was really good last week against Akron, 20.2 DraftKings points. Flourier is a little more of a lower depth of target guy, a little more of a volume guy. He also had 22.3 DraftKings points against Akron last week. They both got home because they both had long touchdowns. So I will certainly be playing both these guys. I don't necessarily think you have to double stack them. I think if you were playing Ulatowski, I think a double stack is absolutely viable. But if not, I think you can just pick one or the other. And then this team's really going to make it easy in terms of the other guys that are playing snaps. Like they don't really do a whole lot with anybody outside of McCray and Flourier. In fact, no one on this team outside of running back Kai Thomas has over 10 catches on the season outside of McCray and Flourier. Now, outside of those two guys, they will play Etheridge a decent bit. He was involved last week against Akron, did have one catch for 11 yards. Muldowney is also a guy that had some usage in the middle of the season, but he hasn't been used since. I would not be playing him. Stanley King is a guy that did have two catches against Miami, Ohio 2 weeks ago, but has not really done a whole lot since then. Kimbrough is a guy that I would be interested in. Against Akron, he did catch the ball 2 times, only for 3 yards, but he had 4 rushing attempts. So that is something that could give him a little bit of value as like a punt play at $3,200. And then Wayne Harris also first game that he had recorded a catch last week against Akron, 3 catches for 19 yards. So, for Kent State, I would certainly be looking to play Flourier and McCray. If you want to think outside the box, then I think Kimbrough and Harris would be your 2 guys to do that with. Next up, we've got the Buffalo Bulls, last team of the night, and they're the highest implied scoring team of the night. And really, CJ Agbana at quarterback is going to be a guy that you're going to want to have in your lineups. He has been really good in MAC play so far this season. It's a big reason why Buffalo, in my opinion, is one of the more improved teams in this conference. He's got 3 straight games over 26 DraftKings points, and he's looking to continue it against Kent State. This is one of the worst defenses in the MAC, so he's going to have plenty of opportunity to put up fancy points. In fact, this Kent State team, we told you that they were 0-11. Like, there's a reason why they're 0-11. It's because they can't defend anything. They give up about 46 points per game, which is 134th in the nation, 533 yards per game, which is 134th in the nation, and they rank 134th in the nation in rushing yards allowed per game and 118th in the nation in passing yards allowed per game. This is a defense that is just going to let you score pretty much at will, and so CJ Agbana is the guy who gets that matchup this time. I would rank him as the number 1 quarterback on the slate. He also does have a little bit of dual threat upside as well. I also think that running back Aljay Henderson for Buffalo is the number 1 running back option on the entire slate. Like, just being honest, it's just the matchup and also the fact that he's been a super workhorse. He has 152 carries on the season. Backup running back Barksdale has 66. Like, this is very clearly Aljay Henderson's backfield. He's going to be seeing a ton of carries. He's going to have a ton of opportunity to put up DraftKings points. And I don't think that you necessarily have to pick one or the other between Agbana and Henderson. We mentioned that Agbana had 3 straight games over 26 DraftKings points. Well, Henderson has 3 straight games over 24 DraftKings points. So you can certainly play them together. They are my 2 favorite plays of the slate, if I'm being honest. And then, like we said, in terms of a backup running back, you got Barksdale, Jaquez Barksdale down here at $4,400. And then Messiah Birch is down there as well. I don't think he's as likely to score as Barksdale is, though. So really, I think if there's any team to play an RB2 on, aside from the Toledo mess, I think that Barksdale is probably your best bet for an RB2. Well, actually, I take that back. I forgot about Akron having Kellum as well. So I don't really – that's a different type of situation, though. Bottom line is I don't mind taking shots at Barksdale, but Henderson's very clearly the RB1. At the wide receiver position, this is another team with super condensed production. They've got 2 receivers that they throw to pretty much exclusively, and you can really – just dodge everybody else if you wanted to. Victor Snow is their most productive receiver in terms of total number of receptions. He is a volume guy. He's had some really good games this season. I don't mind playing him a bit. J.J. Jenkins is going to be more popular because J.J. Jenkins has been better recently than Victor Snow. He's more of a big play threat. 90-yard touchdown last week. He is more of a touchdown guy as well. He scored in 3 straight games. So Jenkins is going to be more popular, but I think you can play both of them. Honestly, if you want to play the entire Buffalo Big Four, I don't think there's anything stopping you from doing so on this slate because there are some salary savers out there. And this slate isn't going to really pinch you for salary, right? So I definitely see the merit to playing both of those guys and playing both of them together. After that, Tajee Johnson is probably your next best bet at receiver. He has been regularly involved every single week, and he just hasn't really put it together for a huge game aside from his 16-point showing against Western Michigan. To me, he is the best cheap receiver option on the slate at $3,600. I don't mind the idea of playing one of Snow or Jenkins and going with Johnson after him. I think that's a pretty solid option. In terms of the other receivers that play a decent bit of snaps, Javian Cuff is down here at $3,000 even. He hasn't caught a pass since the Akron game, but in terms of totality for the season, he is pretty high on this team's leaderboard in terms of total yards. They've also got Orlando, the tight end, who is down here at $3,900. I would rather play Johnson. Johnson's production has been better and more consistent, but just letting you know he is there. And then Tad Barr. Has not caught a pass in the last 2 weeks, but he is up there on the receiving stats for this team. So here's the bottom line. When you look at the receiving stats for this team, it really is just Jenkins and Snow and then a big gap and then Johnson and then a bigger gap and then everybody else. After Johnson's, it's a lot of guys, aside from Orlando, that you don't know are going to be a part of the game plan on a week in, week out basis. All right, that's going to do it here for this slate, y'all. The last MACtion slate of the year. Absolutely love getting to talk about MACtion all month, and I'm hoping you guys did as well. Stay for the rest of the college football content because, we've got a big weekend of college football coming up with this Thanksgiving weekend. We've got bowl season coming up. We've got college basketball content coming up as well. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that way you can be with us for all of that. And if this video helps you out in any way, please hit the like button. It really does help me out a ton when you guys do that. If you're listening on audio, please rate and review. I cannot stress enough how much it helps me out when you guys do that. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up though. So best of luck to you guys on this last MACtion slate of the season. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and I will see you guys next time.